In this video tutorial, you will learn how to configure the communication interface parameters such as IP address, network redundancy protocols, and more in ED2 series IED. Before starting to work with the configuration, it is recommended that you watch the video tutorial on configuring of ED2 IED's opening and saving of configuration file. Network parameters of the IED are configured in the System Parameters section, the Communication Parameters tab. ED2 series IED has several interfaces for communication with other devices, which are listed in the area of the same name. On the IED itself, they are located as follows. The RS-485 serial ports are located on the back panel. Ethernet 0 service port is located on the front panel of the IED. It can also be located on the back of the IED versions without a front panel or with the ability to connect a remote display. The Ethernet 1 and Ethernet 2 ports are located on the back of the IED. Through the interfaces that are marked with a check mark in the Service Functions column, it is possible to write settings, update the configuration and software of the IED, administer the users of IED and adjustment functions. By default, service functions are available only through the Ethernet 0 interface. The ability to provide service functions to other interfaces is available only in Smart Monitor software and through the IED display if you have the appropriate user rights. The TCP IP parameters area specifies the parameters used to periodically check for Ethernet connection to external devices. It is recommended to set these parameters by default. Changing these parameters may be required, for example, in the absence or unstable connection with external devices. In this case, the parameters are selected based on the parameters of the Ethernet network and the parameters of external devices with which you want to configure communication. In other cases, it is recommended to leave these settings by default. For Ethernet interfaces, in the Network Interfaces setting area, IP addresses, subnet masks, and gateways are set in accordance with the project. IP addresses for each interface must be unique and on different subnets, otherwise, when saving the configuration, a corresponding error will appear in the Errors in Configuration pop-up window. RS-485 interface parameters are configured in the Serial Ports area. The port speed column sets the speed at which all devices in the communication channel operate. The next column sets the number of data bits, from 5 to 8, transmitted in packets. If it is necessary to control the integrity of transmitted and received data, the parity parameter is configured. If odd is selected, the parity bit will be set to 1 or 0, so that the total sum of data bits and the parity bit is odd. The same happens when even is selected, only the sum of data bits and the parity bit must be even. Selecting mark will always set the parity bit to 1, while selecting space will always set the parity bit to 0. If the parity bit is not set, then the integrity of transmitted and received data is not checked. The stop bits column indicates the number of stop bits in the packet, 1 or 2. For the Modbus RTU protocol, a delay in symbols between sent packets can be set in the range from 0 to 1000 symbols. In the protocol column, the protocol for each interface is set from the drop-down list. 2 protocols are supported for RS-485, Modbus RTU, and IEC 60870-5-103. If the latter is not in the drop-down list, then it can be added in the Serial Protocols tab by clicking on the Add button and selecting the protocol in the drop-down list. In the IED address column, the network address of ports is set in accordance with the project and based on the rule that there should not be devices with the same network addresses in the network. If none of the above-mentioned protocols will be used, then the address is left by default equal to 1. The ED2 series IEDs implement 2 methods of Ethernet network redundancy: monitoring of link backup communication channels and PRP protocol. Please note that the PRP protocol is only supported in IEDs with 2 ports per Ethernet interface. Link backup is supported by all IEDs. Ethernet redundancy settings are configured in the tab of the same name in the System Parameters section. When using link backup, IEDs with a single Ethernet 1 port will use the Ethernet 1 and Ethernet 2 interface ports as redundant ports. By checking the box in the Enable Redundancy parameter, link backup is enabled. Next, we assign Ethernet interfaces LAN 1 and LAN 2. After assignment, the interface parameters in the Communication Parameters tab will become the same, and their change will be carried out in the parameters of the interface assigned to LAN 1. Link backup provides redundancy of communication channels to the nearest switch. In addition, you can enable the function of monitoring the communication channel to a certain device on the network. To do this, check the box using ping. Set the IP address of the external device and the response timeout. In this case, if the response to the ping poll does not come through the active Ethernet interface within the set time, then a switching to another Ethernet interface will occur, even if the communication channel to the nearest switch was serviceable. In IEDs with two Ethernet 1 ports, the link backup function is enabled by selecting the corresponding item in the network redundancy protocol parameter. No further configuration is required. By default, the first port of Ethernet 1 is always assigned to LAN 1 and the second port is assigned to LAN 2. The PRP redundancy protocol is also available in IEDs with two Ethernet 1 ports. To activate it, select PRP from the drop-down list of the Network Redundancy Protocol parameter. If necessary, it is possible to enable the receipt and transmission of diagnostic control packets. If redundancy is not provided by the project, then in the Network Redundancy Protocol parameter, select None. In this case, only one port of the Ethernet 1 interface will be active, selected by checking the corresponding box. General parameters of Network Parameters group do not need to be configured, because they are used only for diagnosing the operation of the controller installed on the logic unit. After completion of editing the configuration, you need to save it via File menu, or by clicking on the Save button on the toolbar. This video tutorial is over. We hope it was useful to you. Thank you for attention.